Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bella Gamer, and I'm bringing to you today the final class being updated with the Player Core 2 Remaster, the Monk, who currently looks almost like he's kicking me in the head. Probably appropriate for this video, honestly. So yeah, this is the final one. Woo! This is honestly something I've been working really hard to get out as quickly as possible. I've been working my butt off all day, every day. I literally have only had like a couple hour breaks at most over the last week, just about trying to get all this stuff out to deliver to you guys. So that being said, I'm glad we're almost done with this part, but then we have to cover the other stuff, but they probably won't be nearly as extensive as full class reviews. So, or at least change reviews. So, yeah, before we get started with the video, though, I do want to say that Paizo did send me a copy of the PDF for Player Core 2 for the purpose of reviews, but this is not sponsored content, so all thoughts and opinions here are my own. And this video only pertains to the changes to the features the classes got in Player Core and Advanced Players Core, so any feats there that I don't mention or are not from those books are not relevant to this video. So if I don't mention a feat particularly, it has not changed, typically, unless I miss something, but I've been pretty good about it. And if it's not from the books, then it's not relevant to the remaster and will have to be in an errata, which is kind of an ongoing thing. So with that, let's go ahead and get to the changes to Monk. And base class core features, biggest change, expert strikes that we got at level 5 now gives crit specialization. This is huge, and this does mean brawling focus, the level 2 feat, is no longer a thing because it's now just baked into the class. Honestly, this was very necessary, I feel like. Monk was already a really, really good class, but having a feat to pick up crit specialization was something, one, that was unique to Monk, strangely, and felt auxiliary. And also, Monk is such a feat-heavy class. Like, Monk doesn't have subclasses or something like subclasses like any of the other classes do. Your subclasses of monks need to be done through feats, more or less. So having feat expenditures for what should be core class features was always kind of silly. So this is actually a much welcome change. And beyond that, we just have some name changes, and that's all that has changed for the class's general features. So let's just go ahead and get this part done with. Oh, yeah, and there's actually only one. So alertness was changed to perception expertise. That's ridiculous. It's so funny. It makes sense because the other ones that would have been changed for Monk that other classes have were replaced with Path of Perfection anyway. So this does make a lot of sense, but it's so silly to me that I'm not even 5 minutes into recording. I'm probably not even 4 minutes into recording, and we're done with the class features. We just move on to feats. That's insane. I'm glad y'all don't understand how long these videos take. On average, the first 3 class videos I did took 10 to 12 hours to produce. And the ones after that have not been that much shorter, but have been short enough for me to try to get a little bit ahead, being closer to 8 hours, maybe 9 hours. This video will probably take me, I've still spent the last 2 hours rereading class features and feats, making all kinds of notes and all that kind of stuff. So it still hasn't been a short amount of time, but it's going to be far shorter than I've had to deal with so far. So yeah, I guess we're going to move on to class feats. But before we do, it's weird to do a call out so early. But hey, if you're enjoying the content, please leave a like. In fact, I recommend liking any Pathfinder videos that you watch, or at least, ones that aren't egregiously terrible, as it helps Pathfinder get out more into the YouTuber algorithm or the YouTube algorithm. So if you want more people to see our game, then, I highly recommend doing so. And if you like my content specifically, then I would recommend subscribing, as I'm still going to be covering so much more that comes with the Player Core 2. And as well, I cover other tabletop content as well. So if you want a one-stop shop for all things tabletop, then this is definitely the place to be. But let's go ahead and get on to the feats. So, one of the biggest changes was to monastic weaponry. I'm just going to put the new version here because the only thing that has changed is now if we get any kind of weapon familiarity feats, typically through our ancestries, any such weapons that are agile or finesse now count as monk weapons combined in this feat. So this is essentially a compression of both monastic weaponry and ancestral weaponry, which is really good. Again, monk has so many good feats. It's so hard to pick, everything that you need. So any kind of compression we get is really good. But yeah, so if it's an agile or finesse weapon, then we treat it as a monk weapon for the purpose of our abilities and feats. A really good change, honestly, and just making Monk that much better. We're refining perfection. It's so good. So now we got a new feat, kind of, that's called Key Spells, and this is a general feature that has happened with the player core 2, where now many of the base key spells that we got were combined into singular feats. This just makes a ton of sense, honestly, and it makes it easier to pick these feats up as we go. But I do think there's some necessary errata because there's a very strange change here. Because key spells is just a feat that we can pick up that gives us either key rush, which, by the way, another big change, and one I'm not gonna go through the effort of showing everyone here. Key has been changed to the QI version rather than the key KI version. So there you go. If anything has a KI version, it's now QI. But also inner upheaval, which I will show here just for your sake, is just key strike as it was before. It just got a name change. But the reason why I think this needs an errata is we technically can't select this feat multiple times. And when we do select this feat, we pick either inner upheaval or key rush or any other first rank monk key spells that we have access to, which means if we do get any more, they're going to technically be tied to this feat or the later feats, depending on what level they are. That seems incorrect. And for the purpose of my games, I'm definitely going to say you can definitely just take it again to get the next key spell. There's no reason not to. But that seems like a pretty major oversight, which is very unfortunate for Monk. But otherwise, a good feature. I'm all for feat compression of whatever kind, especially on a class that's so jam-packed like Monk. Now, another small change, but I'm going to make mention of it anyway. Mountain Stance now protects you against reposition maneuvers in addition to what it did before. Not much. This happens a lot, and it's going to happen a few more times, I think, in Monk here. So, yeah, not a big change, but it is a change nonetheless. Also, at level 1, there was a really strange change with the removal of Gorilla Stance. Now, again, I think a lot of people are going to kind of get all up in arms. When I say removal, I mean from printed material, because legacy content is no longer going to be in print. So the original core book and advanced player's guide are no longer going to be in print. So you can't find now Gorilla Stance in any physical print books. That's interesting. I do believe it is a space issue. And I think one of the problems with the remaster is they're just compressing 2 books worth of feats for many of the base core classes into a singular book. And so we're going to have these weird situations where it's like, do we know when these feats are going to come back? I don't know. Of course, this will be on Archive and Ethos, so you can definitely just keep using it. And of course, Paizo's okay with you using legacy content as long as that's all right with your GM. It's just one of those things. I'm mentioning it because it's just no longer going to be in print, which may be relevant and is going to be more especially relevant to new people getting into the game because they're not going to know these feats exist unless they, scour through Archive and Ethos. Now, level 2, Elemental Fist got updated with a metal for slashing damage and wood for bludgeoning damage version, which, is okay. There's some situations where this applies, and this has been happening with everything elemental, so a change. Not a significant one in my opinion, but a change nonetheless. Stunning Fist had its name changed to Stunning Blows, but is more or less the same. And now, as I kind of mentioned prior, but I'm going to bring it up here as well, Brawling focus is currently removed in addition to ancestral weapons, as they've been compressed to either other feats or class features. Overall, nothing to really miss here. Cobra Stance got buffed, now getting the Venomous trait, which, if you were unfamiliar, because I couldn't find this on Archive of Nethys. I think they introduced this in How of the Wild, but I didn't want to go through all my books to find it, and I couldn't find it on Archive. But it now gives extra persistent poison damage, essentially, when we use this particular stance, which is pretty cool. So overall, generally a buff. Flurry of Maneuvers now also applies to repositioning. Again, another small change, but a change nonetheless. This one's a particularly strange change because I don't know why it wasn't compressed with everything else, and it is probably just because it was an odd feat level, but even then they could have just left it open. They have Harmonized Self, which used to be Wholeness of Body, and it does exactly the same thing as it used to do before, but now this is just it was a feat before. Nothing changed other than the name. I just don't know why this didn't get made into a new form of key spells compression feats. So yeah, strange, but a name change, I guess, and not beyond that, it's all the same. And here at level 4, we also lost P-Foul Stance. Now, again, probably due to space, and I kind of already aired my grievance on this. Talk to your GM, probably allow you. There's no reason not to. It's just now purely legacy, though. We did get a new feat at level 6, which is Advanced Monastic Weaponry. This just allows us to now apply advanced weapons to monastic weaponry, treating them as martial weapons for the sake of proficiency. So, pretty cool, honestly. I don't know how much normal advanced monk weapons there are. There might be some, but I think this is more relevant to weapon familiarity feats because now we can apply advanced, weapon familiarities to the monk trait as long as they have either agile or finesse. So honestly, a really good feat. Now we have advanced key spells, and honestly, this is where they should have moved Harmonized Self anyway, in my opinion, and that would have saved them some space on the page. Oh well, anyway, this one compresses Key Blasts and what was once Abundant Step, which is now Shrink the Span, which is the same feat. It does the same thing, it just got its name changed. So overall, some feat compression and a name change. Monk's got so many weird name changes here all over the place. It's very strange. It's going to make this video also ridiculously short. Also here at rank 6, we have Crane Flutter that has been adjusted slightly. So before, Crane Flutter was specifically against melee attacks. Now it's just whenever we're targeted with an attack by an observed attacker. That's very weird. It probably should be Strike because the only benefit we get is now it's the same reaction that still gives us the same +3 AC bonus to the triggering attack. Or I guess it increases our Crane Stance bonus to +3. So technically it's a +2 bonus, but anyway. But now no longer are we able to make a reactive strike against the targets if we weren't within reach. Now it's purely if the attack misses you and the attacker is within reach, we can immediately make that Crane Wing strike at a -2. So honestly, this one's just changed, I'll say. It's not really a buff or a penalty. It's nice that we can apply our Crane Flutter to things like ranged attacks, but it sucks now that if a creature with reach is striking us, we don't get to strike them back. So, hate it or like it, this is the change we have now. Also at level 6 here, we probably have one of the most controversial changes to Monk, which is the change to Whirling Throw. So Whirling Throw now has gained the attack trait, which, yes, does apply map. So many people are going to be pretty upset, but personally, I think that's fair. Whirling Throw is already ridiculously powerful, being able to chuck your enemies super far away. I mean, if you had any kind of hazard or cliff or you're on top of a building, Whirling Throw is just honestly like an instant kill maneuver. So giving it the attack trait, sure, is a nerf. I'll definitely admit that. In addition to this, so the extra damage, or it got a buff to the damage it deals to creatures if you throw them into an obstacle. So now if you throw them into any kind of solid obstacle or an object, anything of the like, You use the maximum distance you could have thrown the target for calculating the damage. No longer are you only calculating the damage for how far the creature was actually thrown. So, that being said, a buff to Whirling Throw, but a debuff at the same time. So, I guess a net neutral change for many people. Personally, I'm just looking at this as a buff and a little bit of balancing. But, everyone's going to have their own opinion on this one. We're not all going to agree what we wanted for Whirling Throw. So, it is what it is. And because Gorilla Stance got removed here at level 6, we also lost Gorilla Pound. Again, probably a spacing thing, so no big worry. Just go ahead and ask your GM to see. Though I guess this does affect new martial artists, which is something we're going to look at later in another video when I'm looking over the archetypes. So yeah, that is something to consider, actually. Interesting. Mixed Maneuver has been changed to include repositioning now, so a buff, and makes sense, obviously. Arrow Snatching got its name changed to Projectile Snatching, so a name change, but nothing else has changed. Cobra and Venom is exactly the same as it was before. I'm going to just show you the new one here because nothing has changed. I just wanted to make mention of this because the Cobra Stance got the Envenom trait, so maybe there's anything different. Nope. Now, the persistent damage that this particular feat does just changes the persistent damage from the Cobra strikes. So, I wanted to make mention of it even though nothing changed with this feat. And here at level 10, P-Foul Struts obviously has been removed because there's no longer a P-Foul stance here. And in addition, we have Diamond Soul getting removed. Probably a space issue if I was to hazard a guess. I mean, again, it's legacy content. You can play it, of course, with your GM's permission. All is good there. But Diamond Soul seems to not match the kind of idea they want for Monk moving forward, so maybe that's intended. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I don't see a problem with the feat personally. It was just hazarding a guess. Unfortunately, we won't see these in print until Paizo decides to print them in new books, which, maybe the new war book we're getting next year, Battle Cry, which probably will introduce new martial feats, may add stuff like this. Who knows? We also got a change to improved knockback, now based off of knockback strike, which honestly just makes a ton of sense. So no longer do you have to be a master in athletics. Though the damage did see a little bit of a nerf. So before, the damage was 6 plus your strength modifier, or 8 if you were legendary in athletics. Now it's a d6 damage per 5 foot of movement from knockback strike, which I think overall is easily going to net a less damage overall, but maybe a higher maximum. I don't know. The average, So just a change to improve knockback. I think it makes more sense, and I like the fact that it now ties to the specific feat. But technically, we did see a little bit of a damage nerf. Meditative Focus just saw a full buff like many of the other refocusing feats. Now it recovers all your focus points rather than just 2. Another just name change here, Stance Savant has been changed to Reflexive Stance. This is very common, so all the Savant feats have had their name changed. And strangely, Timeless Body was changed to Peerless Form. This one I'm a little bit more perplexed by, but it's just a name change, so really nothing else has changed. Tangled Forest Rake actually saw a little bit of a change. Now it is actively a reposition action, and you can move the enemy 10 feet even through your space. It effectively does the same thing, but there are situations where it does matter depending on, because now you can move enemies through your space for the purpose of this action. There are some new scenarios that this can apply to. So overall, generally a buff. And here at level 14, we lost Tongue of Sun and Moon, a particularly sad one, but again, kind of makes me feel like it's moving outside of the realm of what they wanted for monks anyway. I'm not sure. Regardless, it's legacy content, so that's between you and your GM. Fuse Stance getting a huge buff, being dropped down from level 20 to 16. Massive. This is probably one of my favorite feats of Monk, and it was always the most tragic because it was at level 20, which made it really hard to pick between it and some other feats. And now we just get it earlier. So good. So I love the fact that they moved Fuse Stance down to level 16. That's absolutely massive. Also, here at level 16, we have Master Key spells. This is just a feat compression of Medusa's Wrath, and Touch of Death, which used to be Quivering Palm, but otherwise works the same. Though here at level 16, we did lose a couple feats with Enlightened Presence and Flinging Blow. Enlightened Presence kind of matches my general idea with it, but Flinging Blow doesn't, so I don't know. It's probably, again, just a space issue. So, being legacy content, talk to your GM if you wish to use these feats. At level 18, we got Grand Master Key spells. This compresses Embrace Nothingness, which was Empty Body, and Empty Body has now been changed. But before I take a look at that, I also want to make mention that Key Form has also been compressed into Grandmaster Key spells, as you can see here. So let's go ahead and talk about what was once Empty Body and is now Embrace Nothingness. So before, Empty Body essentially gave you the effects of Ethereal Jaunts, but now Embrace Nothingness does some similar stuff, but some different stuff. So it's a 2-action focus spell that lasts for a minute. It does have the focus and concentrate and manipulate traits, if that's relevant to your situation. Now, you gain resistance to physical damage equal to your level. You move at half your normal speed, but can move in any direction, similarly. While moving, you have concealments. Now, that's very interesting, and you actually no longer just actually become ethereal for this one. And when it's not your turn and during your turn until you take an action with the move trait. So until you take an action with the move trait, you're invisible. So you're invisible when it's not your turn, and unless you're moving, you're invisible. Whoa, that's nuts. And you can pass through solid inanimate objects as long as they are no more than 2 feet thick. So Embrace Nothingness, I do think can be argued, got some little nerfs in some of the effectiveness of Ethereal Jaunt, but now I feel like is way better just in combat in general, and honestly is nuts in combat. So I'm going to say Embrace Nothingness, huge buff, and a very good prospect if you want to pick up Grandmaster Key spells. Also, here at level 18, we lost Meditative Wellspring, but that makes sense because we, just have a better refocus spell now, or refocus feat now. So, obviously it was going to go. All right, here at level 20, some of the craziest changes. We just gained 3 new level 20 feats, and we did lose one, which I'll talk about at the end. But first, let's talk about Godbreaker. Godbreaker is an insane new feat. It requires Crushing Grab and Whirling Throw, which, you know what, now that I've read through everything, I don't know why Whirling Throw is here. Crushing Grab, I can completely understand. Whirling Throw, I mean, I guess, sure, but Whirling Throw doesn't really play any factor into this. Anyway, what this does is you Hidden Lotus or whatever anime reference or whatever kind of weird reference you have. There's so many different references to this kind of maneuver. Essentially, you hurl the enemy 20 feet into the air, and then you jump up behind them, and you make an unarmed strike. Now, the entire time this is happening, by the way, the enemy is either grabbed or restrained, because that was one of the requirements for the use of this maneuver. Now, if your strike is successful, you get to repeat this 2 more times, throwing them up an additional 20 feet and then kicking them. And maybe I got this wrong before. It's very weird because it messes up the rhythm of how the feat originally went. But technically, some people have pointed out to me that this actually can get to a maximum of 80 feet into the air rather than 60 feet, because it's 20 feet into the air after each additional kick, which there would be 2 more, being 3 kicks, 60 feet plus the initial 20 feet. So yeah, that's insane. Now, if you do miss any of these strikes, Godbreaker and the grab or restrained condition immediately ends, and both you and your opponent fall, taking any falling damage as normal from the total height of the jump. Hopefully, if you are using this maneuver, you have some kind of ability to negate the fall. Probably cat fall if I was to hazard a guess, but there are also just some other ways you can negate fall damage. Now, if all 3 strikes are successful, you immediately grab the creature and bring them crashing down, dealing another unarmed strike damage plus falling damage to them, which is 80. So another strike plus falling damage. You land on your feet adjacent to the creature, you take no damage from the fall, and the creature remains grabbed or restrained by you. So let me just kind of wind this back and play it in slow-mo for you guys. This is a 3-action maneuver that gives us 4 strikes worth of damage potentially, and an additional 80 fall damage on whomever we're striking. Now, I will make special mention, true, if you fail any of the strikes, it immediately ends, possibly ruining some of the action compression with Godbreaker, though always dealing at minimum 20 fall damage to most creatures you grab, unless they have some way of negating fall damage. And I'm gonna say this is the coolest feat ever. Insanely good. I actually really, really like this one. And I feel like as a monk, it's really not hard to do this all too easily with so many of the agile maneuvers out there that you can get access to. I feel like it's not that big a deal. But even if it isn't, all you need to make this good is to hit the first 1 or 2 times, which, by the way, at level 20, anytime the first strike we make in a round, we roll less than a 10, we get a 10 instead. So the first strike of this maneuver is just likely to go off no matter what, which means the enemy is going to fall a minimum 40 feet because after the first strike, they fly 20 more feet into the air. So that being said, I think this is overall a boon. All you need to do is just have some kind of security measure in case you do fall. But that's probably not a problem for most people. So honestly, Godbreaker, insanely good. Another new feat, we got Immortal Techniques. Now this requires that you have Master of Many Styles. Now, whenever you the first time each round you go into another stance, you gain 20 temporary HP that lasts until the start of your next turn. Now, they do need to be monk stances specifically, but we're a monk, who cares? So yeah, Immortal Techniques, really, really good in giving monk a replenishing 20 temp HP every round as long as they're always changing stances. That's insanely good. And lastly, we have a lightning key. This one is very interesting, and honestly, I'm not so sure I liked it being here in this book rather than some of the other feats that could have been in this book. But with the lightning key, as long as we have a lightning or as a key spell, once per minute, as a free action, we can reduce the number of actions to cast a key spell to a minimum of 1 action. So if it's at least 2 actions, we can reduce it to 1 action, which makes some key spells a little easier. Would I pick this as a level 20 feat? I don't think so. I think that would be a bad idea, honestly. But it's here if you really want to be a pure key user. And hey, the Tianxia character guide is coming out here soon, so we might be seeing a lot more key stuff in that book, so keep that in mind. So overall, I'm going to say not terrible. Now, we did lose a feat here at level 20, and this will be the last one we're going to be talking about today, which is Deadly Strikes. Now, compared to the many other really, really good level 20 feats, I don't know if Deadly Strikes was really all that useful. It gave your strikes the Deadly D10, or improved their Deadly trait if they already had it, as long as it was smaller than a D10 anyway. So, I'm going to say that not a big miss, but some people liked this feat, so I don't know. I'm just saying that it missed, and of course, or it's not here. So, of course, with anything that's legacy currently, talk to your GM about it because they'll probably just let you use it anyway. But that's gonna be it for the video. There's so many not big changes. I'm a little perplexed because if you saw my investigator video yesterday, you may have seen that not a lot actually changed with investigator. In fact, for feat changes, they ended at level 12 of all things. In Monk, which was a class that they repeatedly said was pretty much perfect, got a significant number of changes, some really cool feat changes, much cooler than Investigator got for the most part, which makes me sad. So, I feel like, first of all, I'm happy. I'm happy for Monk. Monk's a really cool class. And most of their changes, I will say, were name changes for the most part. But they did just seem to get some better and some really good compression that makes the class work better. And honestly, that was the whole point of the remaster. So being the final video in the class section of the Player Core 2, I will say, overall, pretty much everything the remaster touched got better. all the classes got better, and while there might be some arguments as to whether Paizo's direction matches what the players wanted for their favorite classes, that's a completely different argument. I will say every class got functionally better, and that's really all that matters. So, I'm very happy with it. But, now that we're here at this final video, let me know your thoughts on Player Core 2 down in the comments below. I am very curious. And please remember, this is not the final video of Player Core 2 information. I still have the new versatile Dragonblood heritage to go through. I will also be going through the archetype changes, some of the other ancestry changes if they're significant, and of course, the spell changes, which, there's going to be a lot of videos on that. So stay tuned, subscribe so you don't miss any of the videos, and that's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!